Hi there. Welcome to Illume Conflict of Interest Training. So I'm here to talk to you about conflicts of interests. So what is a conflict of interest? A conflict of interest is a situation in which someone has competing interests or loyalties because of their duties to more than one person or organization. Okay, so we have a conflict of interest policy at Illume that basically says we want to identify any situations where our employees have a conflict of interest and identify whether or not it's okay, whether we can tolerate it, or whether or not there needs to be rules written around it, or if we have certain situations that it's allowed, but we have to know what they are, we have to expose it, and it may just be something that's not allowed. So conflicts of interest involve a person who has two relationships that might compete with each other. So a relationship with Illume and relationship with someone else. It could be a relationship with Illume and a patient, could be a relationship with Illume and another employee, could be Illume and another company that you have a relationship with or influence with. It could be another side business that you have, right? Illume, another side business. So someone might have a loyalty to an employer and also loyal to a family business. And each of these businesses expect the person to have its best interest first. And there could be a conflict. Maybe your company that you have on the side is a business that serves Illume in some way. Maybe they provide accounting services to Illume. And you have a little operation where you want to make sure that you keep the business with Illume because that's financially advantageous to you and your accounting business, and yet you're also an employee at Illume. That could be a conflict of interest. A conflict of interest can exist in many different situations involving personal loyalty and loyalty to a private employer, a government employer, or a professional relationship. So conflicts of interest, what is a conflict of interest? Examples would be nepotism, so giving favors to relatives and close friends, giving somebody a special price because they're, because they're a family member or friend. As long as there's a friend and family policy in place, yes. Just because or secretly, no. Self-dealing, so when someone acts in their own interest rather than the interest of the organization. They are, maybe they're trying to get more referrals for Illume, and they go to the referral source and they ask for some kind of kickback, some kind of advantage in order to get those results. Or maybe you are offering something to someone, to a referral source, in order to get them to give us referrals. So that's a conflict of interest. When is it illegal? So in the public sector, so judges may recuse themselves if there's a relationship with one of the parties in a case. They wouldn't oversee that. If a legislator attempts to profit from knowledge, this is an example of insider trading. So you know something that's going on that might make the stock of a company go up, then you have to recuse yourself and say, no, I'm not going to be a part of this, or not make trades knowing that maybe the price of the stock might go up or down. So in the public sector. In private business, if a company has proof that a board member profited from their role on the board member can be taken to court. So it just depends on, if they themselves knew the company was going to do something and then they did something personally themselves that would allow themselves to benefit from that, then that would be a conflict of interest. Here are some more examples. Nepotism is the practice of giving favors to relatives and close friends in matters of hiring, promotion, transfer, or termination. The term comes from the word nephew. It was a common practice in ancient times to do this. And nepotism is considered a conflict of interest because the relative may not be the best person for the job. So it doesn't mean that we can't hire people who are relatives or close friends, but it means that we have to make sure there's not a conflict in interest, and we need to put structures in place around it to make sure that that we avoid potential conflicts of interest. A common workplace conflict of interest is a manager and employee who are married dating or having a relationship, which is one of the reasons why we don't like it when people start dating or whatever. And if they do, then we ask that you let us know so that we can make sure you're not reporting to each other. This is a conflict because the manager has the power to give raises or promotions to the employee. It's a conflict. Asking for and taking bribes, giving something with the intent to influence, right? Asking for or accepting gifts, right? Misuse of official position to get something not entitled to that would be properly available to others in your situation. So, like doing personal business on company time or avoiding speeding tickets by showing a government ID, using your nursing credentials to get access to something that you shouldn't have access to, but because you have that, you're kind of using it. That's a conflict of interest. Presenting a false claim to an employer for a payment or benefit, like filing a false timesheet for time not worked. That's a conflict of interest. Improperly disclosing or personally using confidential information gained through the job. So if you, again, it's kind of back to that sort of insider trading thing, to take what you know from what you've learned at Illume and go on and do something that could be detrimental to Illume, but be helpful to you in some way. That's considered a conflict of interest. Having a second job that conflicts with the duties with the primary job. So, if you're a nurse that is expected to do on call, and you agree to take a second job during times when you're on call, that's a conflict of interest. Just taking a second job in general isn't a conflict of interest. So plenty of nurses, as we know, and care providers have more than one job, so that's perfectly fine. But it is important to think about whether the second employer in any way is a conflict of interest with Illume. An employee may work for one company, but he or she may have a side business that competes with the employer. In that case, the employee would be likely to be asked to resign. An employee who has a friendship with a supplier and allows that supplier to go around the bidding process or give that supplier the bid has a conflict of interest. So these are all examples of what we mean by conflict of interest. So we ask you to sign at the beginning of your tenure with us a conflict of interest form, and it basically says that you agree to not engage in any activities that are a conflict of interest with Illume without exposing them to us so we can discuss them and determine whether or not it's okay. So it doesn't mean we can't, it just means that you need to expose it. So employees will not engage in activities contrary to the agency's interest or in activities inconsistent with the responsibilities that you have as a nurse, caregiver, or accountant, or bookkeeper, or whatever your role is. A situation in which a person is in a position to derive personal benefit from actions or decisions made in their official capacity, that's a conflict of interest. When an employee achieves personal gain at the expense of Illume, that, my dears, is a conflict of interest. Whenever an employee incurs an obligation to others at the expense of the agency, another example. Such personal gain need not be direct and might include gain by employees' family members or other relatives. All could be considered conflicts of interest. That's all I have to say about that. I hope that that was just delightful and enticing and thrilling for you. Hopefully you're not having any conflicts of interest. If you do, please let us know. In the meantime, go make the world a better place. Thank you.